Galactic Standard Date. Year 11356. Day 96. Sol Standard Date. 4th of the 8th, 3267. General Talaktan got back down on all 6 legs after incensing her soldiers and leapt from the ramparts as she yelled, "Charge! Rip and tear, my sisters! Rip and tear until it is done!" A digital interface appeared in front of her eyes with a targeting HUD as a cannon popped out of her top armor. Her HUD outlined the corpses of the scorched Azarians and calculated the quickest path to reach the enemy lines before displaying the path for her. She didn't have to look back to know that her army was following her. She knew they would follow her to the ends of the universe. It was just in their nature. She climbed over the bodies, following the trail on her HUD. Just before she managed to crest the veritable mountain of Azarian corpses, her HUD flashed in the top left corner. She dodged to the side just in time, as an Azarian burst out of the corpse pile to attack her. 3 tentacles lashed out at her and narrowly missed. She lined her HUD's crosshairs with the main body of the Azarian and gnashed her mandibles. The cannon on her back fired, and her legs that had dug into the tough Azarian flesh below her gripped as hard as they could to compensate for the recoil. The Azarian's flesh tore slightly, but held the recoil of the massive weapon. The same could not be said for the flesh of the Azarian she had targeted. The massive slug she fired tore into the Azarian. It punched through a solid meter of Azarian before detonating its payload and cratering the side of the beast. Its intestines, now exposed, started to slough out, and it let out a scream of massive rage before dozens of ants seemed to rocket straight at it. Her soldiers saw the easy kill their general had placed before them and engaged their jetpacks. Dozens rocketed forth and smacked into the beast at full speed. They shook off the shock of a hard landing and immediately started clamping their titanium-powered assisted mandibles down on the body of the Azarian. They quickly dismantled it, starting with the tentacles, before a couple crawled into the hole in its side to eat it from the inside out. Talaktan didn't bother stopping to watch the Azarian receive its final blow. She crawled over the hill and found her next targets flying in. She gripped the bodies below her with all her strength, and then aimed at the nearest Azarian. She snapped her mandibles together and the cannon went off. The distance was far enough that the Azarian was able to dodge the attack, mostly, but the slug managed to graze it and take a tentacle before exploding mid-air. She began to fire as quickly as the auto-loader could load a new shell. "Cannon Corps! Line up and unload on these bastards! Shredders! Get ready to disassemble the weak ones led by the Cannon Corps. We will defend our worst to the last! Psycho recharge, so you can scorch these fucks again later!" Her voice rang out across the battlefield, and 1,000 cannoneers moved to join her at the top of the bodies. Once they lined up, they began to fire in sync on priority targets, so that they couldn't dodge. They could reasonably dodge the first one, or maybe even 3. 3 dozen? No. Azarian after Azarian ended up loaded to the brim with explosive shells. Their guts rained down across the battlefield. They kept this up for a few minutes before the cannon corps ran out of ammunition. The shredders had been streaking through the air to attack any survivors, or any that had managed to get close enough to touch the firing line during the barrage from the cannon corps. Once the cannon corps was out of ammo, they jumped back behind the lines all at once, abandoning their dark work. Talaktan thrust one of her legs towards the enemies and screamed to her allies, "Psy-Corps, we bought you a few minutes of rest. Whatever energy managed to regain," her voice shook with rage, "use it all to burn these demonic cunts out of fucking existence!" The 100-strong Psy-Corps stepped to the front and began chanting, "Renvet Lunicia, Hekshar Demo Fracta Ket Keltor Demo Wagato." With the last of their power, they called a tide of veil fire to wash over the Azarians that were flooding in. A dozen of the immature Azarians screeched as the veil fire started to melt them down. A large number of the Psy-Corps dropped dead with that last attack, but they had managed to stem the tide enough for the treasures to soar in and start tearing into the back line. Tens of thousands of them flew forward into the waiting tentacles of their ancient enemy. Hundreds of the ants were massacred before they managed to land on the Azarians, but 1,000 more managed to reach them. The Azarians died a slow and miserable death, as they were slowly eaten and dismembered. Unfortunately, they were out of ammo and out of magic. All they had left to face the next wave of Azarians was their mandibles and their flaming passion for murdering their ancient enemy. Talaktan stared up into the sky and watched as more small dots began descending from where the 3 massive enemies hung in orbit. She let out a rumbling growl as her heart started making bogies across the board. She opened her contacts list and contacted the governor. The comm line rang a couple of times before she heard a voice. "Hello? General Talaktan, what's the sitrep?" The general dipped her head in shame. "We were not strong enough to fend off all the attackers. Our munitions are empty and a fresh wave is coming. So, with that said, I propose that we cleanse the world. No food for them, and I cannot recover and revive their brethren. Seeing as a few other worlds have already done this to great effect, let's drop the moon. Hopefully the enemy is not wise to our plans this time either." Governor Tal Mali took a deep breath and remained silent for a moment before answering Tal Aktan. Yes, you are correct. For the future of our brothers and sisters, we must destroy their food supply. If it means even one less enemy on the battlefield of the next world, it will be worth it. Engaging nuclear devices on the dark side of the moon. We will have to hold this place for another 8 hours before the end comes. She input a code on her computer and activated the detonations. The moon lit up, with a bright flash behind it, but there was otherwise no indication of anything going wrong.